and just to follow on some different opportunities, is that we've got a pickleball session coming up that we're going to host. So on Wednesday morning of August the 19th down at Arena 3, we'll be having a pickleball
What,
session.
do you get pissed first or something?
Yeah. So has anyone ever heard of pickleball?
No. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you got a jar of pickles and then No, it's sort of it's a racquetball sport, and it's played with sort of this plastic holy ball, and you've got paddles. Remember paddle tennis that we used to play in our driveways? I remember as a kid with our paddle rackets and balls. It's sort of similar to that, so it's like in a badminton-sized court. So there's not too much running or anything, but it's just, it's a lot of fun, and I've given it a go before. And I'll be heading down to the session as well. So if you're interested, or if you just want to come down and have a look to see what it's all about, you're more than welcome to. If you've got any friends or anything that want to come have a look, bring them along. I've got some flyers at the back, you can take it and put it in your calendar. But I'll keep reminding you as we get closer to the dates. It's only a few weeks away anyway. Alright, let's crack into today's session. So I am conscious of time, I don't want anyone late to the acquisition today. So reading food labels, I've presented you an additional handout this morning, but first of all, before we go into that one, I'm just going to reference a page out of your journal. So this one comes out of page 9 of your journal. So remember, you don't need to bring your journal to class, but you can reference it when you go home if you forget what we've talked about. So this page here is helping you to identify everyday food items. So food items that you can read off the food label that's going to sort of tickle the criteria of what you'd like to see in a good, healthy, everyday food choice. Okay? So I'm going to go through the rule with you, give an example, show you how easy it is, and then throw out there any questions. Alright? So the rule is 10, 10, 6. So what do those numbers correlate to? So when we're looking at a food package, usually when you look at the label, there's typically numerous columns, and the smallest print they could probably put it on the package to make it really hard for you guys to read, alright? But it is important information, and if we can sort of zone into the important part that we want to pick up on, then hopefully that'll help us with making that better food choice, or how to identify something that's sort of ticks the box of healthy eating. Alright, so to apply the 10, 10, 6 rule, we want to look down the 100 gram or the 100 ml column of the product. So on this one here, it's just in the middle here. So what do the numbers correlate to? So the first 10, or doesn't matter what 10, so the 10 total fat down that 100 gram column, we want it to be less than 10. The other 10 in the rule is sugar. And again, we want that to be less than 10. So fat and sugar, both 10, we want to see less than down that 100 gram column. The 6 applies to the dietary fibre. Now, generally, do New Zealanders have enough dietary fibre? No. We tend to not have enough. So with this one here, we want to see products that are higher than 6. Okay, so this is just a general guidance. There always is going to be exceptions to the rule, so if you do have certain dietary requirements, you'll know that, maybe fibre is something you need to be mindful of, then obviously take that into consideration. So 10, 10, 6, total fat less than 10, total sugar less than 10, dietary fibre more than 6. So those are your three numbers, and all down that 100 gram column is where you look. So let's have a look at Weet-Bix. Alright, so what are your first thoughts? Do you reckon that'll tickle the boxes, be a good, healthy, everyday food item? Yeah. Okay, so let's look at total fat, down the 100 gram, comes in at 1.4, so well below the 10.
Yeah.
Sugar, 2.8, again well below the 10. Dietary fibre, 10.5, well above the 6. So it ticks all the boxes of what we want to see in an everyday food item. Okay, so
what
that's
about adding sugar to it?
Yeah, so what we're doing here is we're just concerned with the label of what we're actually getting out of the box. Because sometimes we can make the assumption, oh yeah, no, that's all good, I can have quite a lot of that, this has got much sugar. We are assuming what's in the product. What we're adding, we can see what we're adding. We're in control. We can see we've added sugar, we can see we've added cream, okay? And when the dietitians come along, they'll talk about, the different food categories and how often we should have portion sizes and all that. Okay? Right, good question. Because that's always another question, oh, but I like to have some brown, We'll just look at what we're taking out of the package. Now also with that rule, it's also got a note around sodium. Again, do you think that we consume enough sodium, that's salt, in our diets?
Too much.
Yeah. Again, on average, New Zealanders are consuming too much salt. And there's a little bit of information down the bottom here. So they say, on average, New Zealanders consume about 1.5 teaspoons of salt a day. The recommendation would be no more than 1. But even that seems quite high. But if you think the extra half teaspoon per day over a week, how many more extra teaspoons is that? So it adds up really fast. So it is quite scary. And also to know that of the salt consumed, 10% occurs naturally in food products. Okay? 15% of our intake is coming from what we add maybe when we're cooking or at the table. So we've got our salt shake and we just add it to the thing. So what happens, where do we get the other 75% of our salt intake? So if it's not naturally in the food or what we add when we're cooking or when we're about to consume our meal, where's the other 75% coming from?
Processed food?
Exactly, processed foods, packaged foods, things that maybe we're not sort of comprehending actually how high the sodium level is in some food products. Okay? So that's quite scary. 75% is huge. Alright, so as a side note here for an everyday food item, sodium, salt, we would like to see less than 400 milligrams per 100. Okay? So that's on the lower side, could be lower. So we're looking at sodium here on my Weet-Bix. Comes in at, sorry, I've lost my lot, 285. Okay, so that's below the 400. So that's a good, okay, ticks on the box. Yeah, weakness is all good, but sometimes you may find with products, if they take out fat, they take out sugar, they may replace it with something like salt. Or they take out fat, they add more sugar. So yeah, just be mindful of that. Yeah?
I discovered Weight Watchers food aren't as good for you as they make out.
No.
They're loaded with all sorts of imaginary things.
And it's not cheap. Weight Watchers food? No. Yeah. Alright, so that's an example of looking for everyday food items. 10-10-6, see if you can apply it for foods that you would typically eat on an everyday basis. If it doesn't come with a label, it's probably better for you because it's natural produce, isn't it? Okay? Alright, so any questions with that 10-10-6 rule before I get into this sheet? So this sheet here has just been revised, so it's all up to date. So this is looking at the different food categories because the nature of some ingredients or the nature of the product may see that it's a little bit higher in certain things, so a little bit higher in fat, a little bit higher in sugar. So this is helping us to identify what could be a good or even better choice in that food category. So I'm going to go through some examples with this just to see how you can use this sheet. Alright, so I've got crackers here. So I've got 2 boxes of crackers, both are Huntley and Palmer's. One's an original mixed grain, one is cheese and chives. Now if I were to ask you which one do you think would give you better nutritional goodness, which one would you think? This one here? So we're probably drawn into the word mixed grain, thinking grains are good, could be healthier than cheese and chives. Okay? So if you look at the front page here, in the blue rectangle, you'll see a section down the bottom titled crackers. Okay? So it's giving us some criteria around what to look for in the fibre, sodium and saturated fat. Okay, fibre, good for that per 100 grams would be more than 5, better would be more than 10. So I look at my original mixed grain, the fibre per 100 grams is 8.9. So it's good and it's nearing that better criteria, so that's a really good start for fibre. Now I go to my cheese and chives and I'm looking for fibre and unfortunately it's not listed on the label. So what would that indicate to me as a consumer?
They don't want to tell you.
They don't want to tell me, probably because it's really low. So they're thinking maybe if we exclude it off, they'll forget the importance of wanting to see fibre in products such as crackers. Okay, so that would be your first red flag. Alright, the next one, sodium. Good would be less than 800 for a cracker. So you can imagine how high some crackers are in sodium. So that's sort of a little red flag right there, is to be very mindful of the sodium in your crackers. Better would be less than 500. So again, that's now nearing more that everyday level. So I go to my grainy cracker, this comes in at 430, so that's good. Okay, my cheese and chive comes in at 1040, huge difference. Very high in sodium. So a lot of the flavour that they're getting from these crackers are with salt. The last criteria, talking about saturated fat. What's our knowledge around saturated fat? Is it the type of fat that we want to see a lot of in our diets or not so much?
Less.
Less, yeah. So there is definitely a part in a healthy diet for fat, but it's getting in the right types of fats in our diets. Okay, and saturated fat is the one that we want to minimise or reduce. Alright, so for our recommendation for saturated fats for crackers, good would be less than 2 grams per 100, better would be less than 1. So I come to my grainy cracker, per 100 it's less than 1 gram, so that's in your better criteria. My cheese and chives per 100 grams, saturated fat, 15.2. This is saturated fat, that's not even total fat, okay? So what do we like to have on our crackers? Cheese, maybe some butter, margarine. Yep, and there's nothing wrong with that, okay? But what do we know with those products? That's saturated fats in those products, so we're adding saturated fats on top of saturated fats, so it's probably not something you would want to eat on a regular basis, okay? So today is not about saying that you can no longer eat items that you start to identify like this. But maybe if it's something that you would have in your weekly shop, maybe cutting it down so it becomes something that you eat occasionally rather than every day. Okay?
What is exactly saturated fat?
Saturated fat?
Yeah.
Yep, so we're going to have a session on fats and we'll get more into that. Okay? But basically it increases our bad fats in our bloods, our bad cholesterol. So not good for heart health. Yeah. Causes obese. Yeah. Alright, so I'll give you one as an example here. So with breakfast cereals. So would consider that an everyday food item, starting the day with either breakfast cereal, toast or something like that. So obviously Weet-Bix is a winner. Again, in the blue rectangle there, it gives some criteria around breakfast cereals. So for sugar, they recommend per 100 grams, 15 grams or less. But for me, I consider that an everyday food item, so I'd probably want to see it 10 or less. Okay? Now they say cereals with dried fruit, 25 grams or less is okay. Now why do you think they've increased that?
More sugar in the fruit.
Yeah. So dried fruit has got natural sugar. Okay, so that's going to elevate the overall sugar content in the cereal. But as you'll see in this chart here, where I'll show you shortly, is that it's a very high concentration of sugar in dried fruit, so it's very easy to overconsume the right portion of dried fruit. So if you, for example, what's a portion of fruit? What's the size of a portioned fruit? So it's what would fit in your cupped hand would be considered a portion of fruit, okay? That is not the same when it comes to dried fruit. That would come down to maybe a teaspoon or 2 to 3 prunes or dates, okay? So it's, not the same equivalent because it's very, concentrated in sugar, okay? So that's why they've increased that to 25 grams. Make sure that they haven't added too much dried fruit into the cereal mix. So we'll go through a few examples here. Now, I'll start off with the Rice Krispies or Rice Pops or however they call them here. So I've got two supermarket, a supermarket brand and a No Frills here. And we're going to search through the criteria here. So again, they said cereals 15 grams or less of sugar. This one here, the Pams, comes in at 10.6 per 100 grams. Okay, so that one's not too bad for sugar. This one here comes in at 5 grams. So that's less than half. Okay. For sodium, 400 grams grams or less, which again I would hope, because it's an everyday food item here. So my sodium for this one, 718. So that's almost double the recommendation of what you want to see in a breakfast cereal. Now, does that shock you? Does that surprise you to think that that's got so much salt in the Rice Krispies? Yeah. This one here, sodium is 350, so a lot less. Now, the Heart Foundation have been doing some really good work with food manufacturers around trying to reduce the amount of salt and sugar that they have in products. And so hopefully this is a good reflection of what's been happening, because this is a more recent purchase. This one was purchased a few years ago, this brand. Okay, and fibre. So we want to have a good amount of fibre with what we're consuming with the breakfast cereal, so 5 grams or more is recommended. This one comes in at 2.2, so not much fibre with these Rice Krispies. This one here, they haven't even listed it. Okay, so no fibre listed on it. So if you just ate some Rice Krispies, they don't usually fill you up. They don't, you don't have a lot of energy for very long, unless you've maybe had it with, yogurt or something a little bit heavier or filling. So maybe mix your Rice Krispies up with something else if you like that. Snap, crackle, pop sound in the morning. Now with my example of a muesli, for the sugar we want to see 25 grams or less. This one comes in at 19.9. I think when I look for mueslis in the supermarket, the first thing that would draw me into high levels of sugar would be if they're in clusters. So if they're in clusters, something's sticking them together, so that would probably mean that there's some sort of sugar involved. So this one's more of a dry muesli here. So 19.9, it works in well. Sodium comes in at 110, so very low sodium. And fibre comes in at 8.9, or 8.1. So that one's not looking too bad. Alright. So could this be potentially helpful too? Just a little... Yeah. And I think when you go home, is just pull out some of the things that you would typically eat quite often or be in your regular supermarket shop and just see how they compare. And they may compare really well. Oh, yep, that's looking really good. Or there may be some things that start to shock you. Oh, I just didn't comprehend or realise that there's so much sugar in that. Next time I go to the supermarket, I'll just stop in that one section and I'll actually stop and I'll compare a few brands. Don't think that if you start to look at the more expensive brands, that's where you're going to get the better quality. No, the supermarket no-frills brands can be just as nutritious as the more expensive ones. So do look across the price range, okay? And then just slowly start to investigate what you're eating, what you're buying over a period of time. Don't try to zone in on everything because you'll go crazy. Your next supermarket shop will take forever. And, just be more aware of what you're buying, what you're eating. Because at the end of the day, if we're filling our body with what it needs, it's going to perform better for us. Okay? Why do we buy things like this? I'm not saying that all of us do, but why do we buy packaged foods that seem quite easy? Quick and easy, so we think quick and easy, don't really have to think about it. Okay, so in this box here, what have we got? What do we get out in this box? Not much, eh? So we get a portioned bag of rice and a little sachet of flavour. Okay? So, the danger. Now, I guess price-wise, I think this box would probably be about $3 to buy, maybe, I guess. You can buy quick and easy rice sachet packets now when you rip the bag, put it in the microwave, but if you're looking to save money, that's probably not the most effective way to do that. When you think of a bag of rice that you can cook up and prepare, lasts over many meals, costs the same as one quick meal, right? But the danger of buying things like this, per 100 grams, the sodium content is 1,490 milligrams. So you can see what they've put in that sachet there is they've given you salt to add to your rice. Okay? You don't just have this picture when you pull it out of the box. You've still got to prepare the rice. You've still got to add the seasoning. So what they've done is they've just given you the flavour to add to your rice. Okay, so sometimes just the way that we sort of think or comprehend what we're getting with this purchase actually, how much more difficult is it from having a bowl of rice that we just scoop out our rice, we're still going to add the water, we're still going to do everything, but we've made it a lot healthier probably for us because we're in control of what we're adding. Still adding our flavours, but we can see what we're adding rather than saying, oh yeah, we'll just remove the sachet and put that in the rice. And then, you know, having a very high sodium content in our meal. Alright, so sometimes just, you know, thinking about, well, actually stop, why am I choosing this? Actually, can I make it more cost effective? Can I make a healthier choice by selecting my own bag of rice and flavouring? Alright, last bit here is these charts that I've put along this morning. So again, this is just to give you a visual idea of the amount of salt and sugar and some typical foods that we may be consuming. So fruit in a can be fine, especially when the fruit is not in season and it's quite expensive to buy. So buying fruit in a can is fine. Stay away from that word syrup though, because look how much more sugar you're getting. This is the same portion, 1 cup of apricots. This is in its natural juice. This is in syrup. Look how much more that is for 1 cup. Huge amounts. Okay? Fruit juice. Dietitian will talk more about that, but it's just that concentration of sugar again in fruit juices. Okay? Not good for our health, not good for our teeth. Fruit, yes, will give us natural sugars, but it gives us lots of other good things. So as long as we eat them in moderation, our fruit, so 2 to 3 or 2 to 4 portions of fruit a day, that's okay.
And is it right to say that because it's actually compact sugars, that they take longer to break down in the body so they're not as harmful as like a teaspoon of sugar?
So what I've heard the dietitians talk about when they say the sugar, because some people like it's raw sugar better than brown sugar, then white sugar, then fruit sugar. Your body processes or sees it as sugar. So it just process it. So it doesn't matter in what form it's come in, it'll be processed. Same with the body. But what I'm saying with fruit is obviously it's given us a lot more goodness. And that's the same with salt. We talked about salt the other week in Levin, saying, oh, is Himalayan salt better or rock salt better than, paying more money for it, but actually it's still sodium. So yeah, don't go out and buy more expensive thinking it's going to be better for my health. Actually, you're paying more money.
I think it's a nut now called coconut sugar.
So that'll be a good question for the dietitian when she comes in next week. Yeah, because that has been brought up before, the coconut sugar and coconut,
And what about coconut milk?
Yeah, again, yeah, bring it up with the dietitian next week. Coconut products can be a bit with the high saturated fat that comes along with it, but yeah, good question to come along with the dietitian. So last chart that I'll show you before we head out, and feel free to come up and have a look at any of the other ones. This one's quite shocking, but you look at these and you think these are my sort of occasional treat foods. These wouldn't be my everyday healthy food choices. Hopefully, you'll be thinking the same as me. Okay, so quite shocking here with my McDonald's thick shake that I might have as an occasional treat. 124 grams of sugar, so it's about 5 grams of sugar per teaspoon. So that's, do my maths quickly, about 25 teaspoons of sugar I've had with that thick shake, and then with a bit of fat. A lot of this fat that we're seeing here is not the good type of fat that we want in our diet, so it can quickly accumulate. So, it's one thing to see the number, it's a different thing to actually see the bag next to it. Alright, so hopefully that's just given you some things to think about. And again, I just go back to, it's just really important that, what we're fueling our body with is the stuff that it needs to perform well. So, take the time to have a look at home and do some investigations. And if you've got anything that you come across that you'd like to share with the class, please share that with us.
Yeah, thanks, John.
Okay?
Well, about Coca-Cola, Diet Coke, it's full of sugar, isn't it?
So they use a lot of, can go into artificial sweeteners or a natural sweetener. And I think the dietitian, she'll talk a little bit about that, just in terms of the no sugar or the diet fizzy drinks, obviously better than the regular because of cutting out so much sugar, but at the end of the day that should be a progression to then go to water. Water is what your body needs. Yeah, because he's still, early in investigations around the long-term effects of artificial sweeteners as well, on gut health in particular. So it's still too early to understand the long-term side effects if consumed in large amounts. So yeah. Alright, so we'll end our presentation there and we'll break off to our activities.